Okay, let's dive right into today's explainer, where we're going to unpack how the entire AI industry is fundamentally shifting right before our eyes. We're moving away from this old model of scarcity, where every single prompt felt like a precious, metered resource, straight into an era of ubiquitous, uncapped access. And as you'll see, that massive shift is sparking some absolutely fierce corporate battles behind the scenes. To make sense of today's incredibly packed news cycle, we've broken everything down into 5 key trends. The era of uncapped AI, developer wars, corporate shifts, the global AI arms race, and finally, a business reality check. So let's kick things off with Section 1, the era of uncapped AI and the race to 1 billion weekly users. 1 billion. It's almost hard to wrap your head around, but ChatGPT just crossed a jaw-dropping 1 billion weekly active users in under 4 years. I mean, that kind of adoption velocity is literally historic. And because they've hit this massive milestone, OpenAI is completely dropping text chat limits across all of its tiers. So the era of hitting a cap and having to wait hours just to keep working on your text prompts, yeah, that's officially over. From here on out, usage limits are being pushed purely to more compute-intensive tasks, like analyzing files, generating images, and using voice modes. Now, this perfectly illustrates how OpenAI is strategically segmenting this colossal 1 billion strong user base. Free and Go users, you're being upgraded to the new default GPT 5.6 Luna model. It comes with unlimited text and a brand new Think button. But if you're a paying Plus or Pro subscriber, you get the upgraded GPT 5.6 SAW model. And SAW is a beast. It introduces a really cool reasoning depth slider and boasts a massive 68% reduction in factual errors compared to the previous Instant model. So they're basically giving away the baseline for free while heavily incentivizing power users to pay up for pure accuracy. And as part of this great consolidation into a single, seamless platform, OpenAI is also doing a bit of house cleaning. They're officially retiring the standalone Atlas browser agent on August 9th. But don't worry, those autonomous web browsing capabilities aren't actually disappearing. They're just being folded directly into the flagship ChatGPT and Codex interfaces. It's all about creating one centralized user experience. Which brings us to Section 2, the developer wars and the relentless fight for engineers. Look, while OpenAI is hyper-focused on everyday consumers, their biggest rivals are quietly battling for the most lucrative demographic on the planet, developers. Over at Anthropic, they are giving engineering teams exactly what they've been begging for, which is total control. The latest Claude Code update introduces self-hosted runner environments via a new command line interface. This means teams can now run sessions entirely on their own local machines or containers instead of relying on Anthropic's infrastructure. That is a massive win for corporate privacy. Plus, they've completely removed the cap on spawning subagents, which totally opens the door for these incredibly complex nested autonomous workflows. However, that flexibility definitely comes with a trade-off. If you're a developer relying on raw speed, you're going to need to adjust your pipelines right now. Anthropic just stripped the fast mode parameter entirely from Claude Opus 4.7. If you try to call it, you're just going to throw an error. So to keep that high-speed performance, developers are essentially being forced to migrate their systems over to either Claude Opus 5 or Opus 4.8. Meanwhile, xAI is executing at an absolute breakneck pace to capture this exact same developer market. They just got Grok 4.5 live right inside GitHub Copilot. That makes it instantly selectable for millions of developers in VS Code and the CLI. But they didn't stop there, not even close. They simultaneously launched the massive 1.5 trillion parameter Grok 4.6 model, exactly on schedule. Actually, hitting these target dates is a massive flex for them right now. It shows they can execute on a highly compressed release cadence while focusing heavily on post-training upgrades. Of course, OpenAI is not ignoring developers either. They're strategically expanding their identity footprint into the broader ecosystem with a brand new sign-in with ChatGPT beta. By letting you authenticate third-party apps, think major players like Notion, GitLab, Vercel, HubSpot, directly with your ChatGPT account, OpenAI is weaving itself into the very fabric of how we log into the modern web. It's honestly an incredibly smart, long-term developer lock-in strategy. All right, let's move into Section 3, corporate shifts and leadership shakeups. Because with billions of users and this intense developer competition, the pressure is triggering some massive shakeups at the very top of these tech giants, starting with Google. Demis Hassabis, who is a true legend in this space, posted a farewell message as he formally hands the day-to-day reins of DeepMind over to incoming SVP Kore Kavukugel.
In his sign-off, he praised DeepMind as the AI engine room of Google, and he is spot on. This is the exact team powering Gemini for a user base that now tops 950 million monthly users. But right on the heels of that very polite corporate shakeup came a pretty brutal industry assessment. The research firm Semi-Analysis published a note bluntly titled, "Gemini is cooked." Their read on the situation? They're suggesting that Hasaba stepping back actually signals the end of a massive, long-running internal power struggle over computing resources. Their ultimate prediction is that with this DeepMind shakeup, Google Cloud, GCP, is the real winner, and they expect GCP's revenue to accelerate meaningfully now that the internal compute fight has apparently resolved in their favor.
Next up, Section 4, the global AI arms race and expanding markets.
The crucial takeaway here is that this is not just a Silicon Valley story anymore. The global financial arms race driving these models is accelerating at blinding speed, particularly in the East. Goldman Sachs just updated their year-end annualized recurring revenue projection for mainland Chinese AI models. They bumped it up from an already staggering $10 billion to a massive $13 billion. That sudden $3 billion hike is being driven by surprisingly strong enterprise adoption across the region, which just proves the immense appetite for AI integration on a truly global scale. And to protect their piece of that rapidly expanding pie, the Chinese AI lab DeepSeek is pushing for a renewed funding round, targeting a monumental $8 billion. But here's the absolute wildest part of that story. Reports indicate they aren't raising this cash because they need compute or operational funds. No, they are raising $8 billion strictly to retain their top AI researchers and prevent them from being poached by rival labs offering higher valuations. The war for top-tier AI talent is officially just as expensive as the war for GPUs. At the very same time, the economics of so-called open source are clearly shifting. Alibaba is proving that open-weight models won't necessarily be entirely free forever. They just announced plans to charge power users for high-volume access to their upcoming Qwen 3.8 Max model. And you can see why. When you're offering a massive 2.4 trillion parameter model with a 1 million token context window, the hosting costs are just astronomical. Even the biggest open source champions have to start balancing the books eventually. Finally, that brings us to Section 5, our business reality check on the true cost of AI. Let's bring everything back down to earth for a second, because despite the massive hype, the 1 billion user milestones, and these trillion parameter models, the day-to-day business of AI is still messy, it's incredibly expensive, and it is grounded in physical, real-world constraints. First off, we're seeing wild amounts of speculative money flowing into unproven hardware. A startup called Hark AI just closed a $700 million Series A at a dizzying $6 billion valuation, all to build custom hardware for personal intelligence. Meanwhile, OpenAI is jumping right into the ring with their own debut consumer device. It's reportedly going to be a luxury, donut-shaped metal smart speaker designed by legendary Apple designer Jony Ive and priced at a premium $300 to $400. They are betting heavily that consumers actually want premium physical avatars for their AI. Yet, even with these sky-high ambitions and frankly absurd valuations, the industry gets these grounding reality checks every single week. Just look at the timeline. On August 5th, OpenAI had to agree to a $3.2 million settlement with the Department of Justice over allegations regarding hiring discrimination against non-US citizens. And then, just this past Friday morning, literally days after hitting 1 billion users, Down Detector logged a massive ChatGPT service outage globally at 2:10 a.m. Eastern, leaving countless users totally stranded in the dark. Which leaves us with this final, absolutely critical thought to ponder. As AI officially transitions into this uncapped, ubiquitous phase where billions of people rely on it every single day and developers are wiring it into every app we use, just how fragile is the infrastructure keeping this whole boom alive? Who will actually be able to maintain the unprecedented stability, the trust, and the sheer massive compute required to run what is very quickly becoming the world's most critical digital infrastructure? It's definitely something to keep in mind as we watch this space continue to evolve. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.